We're back to learning Photoshop in a year, day 55. Let me show you how to deal with over and underexposed photos. And we'll use the principles that we've introduced in the last tutorials. So we use our histogram as a helping tool. If you can't see that, go to Window and then click on Histogram. Let me show all channels. And here we have a typical example of an overexposed photo. All the information is on the right hand side, and on the left there is a gap. So can we deal with that? Number one is we have an exposure option right here. So this is yet another adjustment layer. You can access it right there or via adjustments. There it's again. If you can't find adjustments, also go to Window and click on Adjustments. Then we want to go to its properties. And there we can adjust the exposure just like that. And you can see how this drags the curve to the left. And this is in principle what we want for overexposed photos. But it's actually not the best way to deal with them. Instead, I prefer, and I would recommend for beginners, to use brightness and contrast. We've already used that in one of our last tutorials. So let me delete the exposure adjustment layer here. And then we'll use brightness and contrast again. And now we can not only adjust the brightness, which drags the curve to the left. If we drag the slider to the left, we can also increase the contrast, which stretches the curve. And if I use auto here, you can see this exactly what Photoshop would recommend that we do. So we bring down the brightness for overexposed photos and then increase the contrast. And this drags the curve to the left, stretches out, and then we have preserved most of the details. And we've also brought down this, let's say, over brightness, this overexposition. And this is usually what you want to do for overexposed photos. Let's switch to an underexposed one. And here it's just a flipped example. So it's too dark. Therefore the information is all on the left. And on the right we have a gap now. Again, I would use brightness and contrast instead of exposure. And here we would obviously bring up the brightness, and then depending on how the curve behaves, it makes sense to play around with the contrast. Here in this case the curve gets stretched to the right if we go up with the brightness, but there isn't a huge gap on the left, so contrast isn't really needed that much. Let me check the auto. What does it recommend? So it goes a little bit up with the brightness to 40. It's not just a little bit, it's quite a lot. But it doesn't really do anything with the contrast. And the reason is, you've seen that in the histogram, we don't have a gap on the left then. This is why I would recommend you use the histogram all the time to check your results. So it's a great indicator for how to adjust brightness and contrast and play around with these values. And this is how I would adjust over and underexposed photos in Photoshop. I hope this video was helpful, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.